Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. Like so many birders, conservationists, and nature lovers, I was deeply saddened to hear of the recent death of Bill Oddie. Bill wasn't simply a television presenter or a comedian who happened to love birds. He was one of the people who transformed birding from something that may have been thought of as quite niche into something joyful, exciting, and accessible for us all. He showed us that birding was something that we were allowed to enjoy. Before he was the birding one, of course, he was an entertainer and part of the Cambridge Footlights alongside Tim Brooke-Taylor and Graham Garden, with whom he formed The Goodies, one of my favourite TV programmes growing up. But somewhere along the way, the person who wrote comedy sketches and novelty pop songs became one of the most recognisable and respected figures in British birding, known for his genuine passion and expertise. He was a real naturalist and someone who wrote, painted, and championed conservation long after the cameras stopped filming. Many of us had our own birding journeys influenced by Bill, whether it was watching his TV programmes, like Birding with Bill Oddie and Springwatch, or reading his books about birding. He inspired so many people to pick up a pair of binoculars and head outside, encouraging us to look more closely, listen more carefully, and to appreciate the wildlife that surrounds us every single day. In this episode, I'm joined by Stephen Moss, who knew Bill personally and worked alongside him for many years, producing some of his best-loved wildlife programmes. Stephen shares some wonderful memories of Bill, revealing the man behind the television personality. Funny, hugely knowledgeable, endlessly curious, occasionally mischievous, and utterly devoted to birds and conservation.
Bill was an extraordinary person. I still say, and I mean it, that he was the only genuine genius I ever worked with. And that was for lots of reasons. He didn't play by any of the rules of television, or indeed life, really, bless him. One rule of television is you write scripts and you plan them. And of course, you veer off them a bit and people ad lib. But by and large, you've got the sort of safety net of the script. Well, Bill was like a trapeze artist without a net when we filmed. And that was particularly true when it was live. But on the early series of Birding with Bill Oddie and later Bill Oddie Goes Wild, we had a running order and we knew what we hoped to film. And of course, as you know, with birds, you can't always guarantee you'll film them or you can find them. And then you come across stuff you weren't expecting. And that happened a lot. And Bill would basically riff on a theme about the birds. We quite often sat him down just before we were going to look for a bird and he would sort of talk about it and we'd just record it. And then we'd use that material, often quite heavily edited, to cover what normally would be added much later in commentary after you've edited the programme. So it was a really different way of doing stuff. And I think it wasn't just that. You know, he was also extraordinarily original. He was a great artist. He was a very, very good writer, which people forget about. He was a musician, very talented musician. Comedian, of course. I grew up The Goodies, as I'm sure you did.
I did, yes.
And obviously, not just a birder, but a birder up there with people like Ian Wallace, and Brian Bland, those sort of legends of post-war birding. And Bill, had he never done any comedy, had he never been on the television, we'd all have heard of him and have seen him at bird fair because of his great birding status. He was loved by birders not because of the fact he was on the television, but sort of despite it.
And I know he's absolutely beloved by lots and lots of my listeners. And as you say, yes, I grew up knowing Bill first as a member of The Goodies, which was required viewing in our home. When I realised that he was a birder, and I think one of his first books was The Little Black Bird Book. Yes, that's it.
Yes.
Oh,
1980.
gosh.
Yeah.
And I think he was really the first adult that I knew that was a birder because, I had my I Spy book of birds and I kind of thought of it as something that kids did or, young people did.
Absolutely.
And so to have an adult speaking about birds, and then, of course, when his TV programs came on, he was just absolutely someone to look up to.
Yes, he defined birding, of course. Mark Andrews, the artist who's at Bird Fair, said to me when we'd heard the news, we spoke to each other, and he said that book defined what birding was, and it's still readable today. And I was like Bill. I was was an only child in a single parent family, and people always say you must have been very lonely. I wasn't lonely. I was just bored witless. And I think, like Bill, I think we both took up birding because of that. Both grew up on the edge of big cities, him in Birmingham, me in London. And so we had quite a lot in common. But when I read his biography, Gone Birding, and also Little Black Bird Book, which my mother used to take me out birding, even though she wasn't interested, and she gave it to me in Christmas 1980 when I was 20 years old, and I've still got it here. And, it was a very, as you say, it sort of validated birding that Bill, well, I was going to say took it seriously, because we did take it seriously, but he also mocked it in a really brilliant way. So, yeah, as I said, I mean, the word complex continually surfaces with Bill. He was a very complex man, and that showed in everything he did.
I remember his style on Springwatch when that first came. He was one of the presenters. Was he the main presenter of Springwatch?
Yes, it was Bill. In fact, the original series was called Springwatch with Bill Oddie, because he was a real star by then. And the controller of BBC Two chose that the name. My team said, "It's not Spring." I said, "It is Spring. It's the end of spring. Shut up. It's a good name." Kate Humble was she sort of anchored it very well, and Simon King was the sort of roving person. He was often out and about somewhere else. And Bill, and it was a brilliant team. I mean, no disrespect to the presenters today who are very talented, but the three of them made a great team, partly because, again, they were so different. There's a brilliant sequence which colleague of mine did for Wild in Your Garden, which is the precursor of Springwatch, where we're on at 11 o'clock at night all through the week, and we have 1 million viewers and literally no wildlife to show. I mean, we're showing clips from the day, and it's a very funny sequence, which I'll be showing at Bird Fair next year. And Simon is trying to sort of explain why the badgers aren't anywhere to be seen and what's happening with the birds. And Kate is trying to hold the whole thing together with slightly increasing panic in her voice, because, she's like the anchor to it. So I think she feels more responsible. Bill's loving it. He thinks it's absolutely hilarious that there's nothing to be seen except a pair of wood mice. And yeah, when Springwatch was on, I still remember this. I think it's May the 26th, 2005. I'm sitting in the gallery. There's about 100 people working on it. I'm the series producer, so I'm nominally in charge. But by that stage, of course, you're not. The studio director and his team are in charge. And we're hearing BBC Two saying to us, coming to you in 10 seconds. Good luck, everyone. Director, good luck, everyone. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And it starts and the music runs and Bill comes on. And of course, we have no idea what he's going to do or say. And we have no idea for the whole of the rest of that series, and indeed all the others he did. And that's why people loved it. That's why people loved him. It was real. It was organic. It was, I always compare him to a jazz musician, to David Attenborough's concert pianist. They're both brilliant, but they're completely different.
I really remember his enthusiasm. He seemed to really get into the whole feeling of the birds, and his description, like the little brown jobs, that stays with us now. We still use those terms when we're out thinking, there's an LBJ over there. And he was just wonderful. I did see him at an airport once, and I was desperate to go over and introduce myself, but he was with, you may even have been there, I don't know. He was with a few other people with big trunks. They were obviously off somewhere to go filming.
Yeah.
And I decided, no, I wouldn't approach, because, if they were kind of working or in the middle of trying to sort out all these trunks and negotiate things, it was probably best not to have people running up. But I always regret that I never did get the chance to meet him.
He could be quite shy, of course. I mean, there's two kinds of comedians, and I've worked with people like Craig Charles, who's exactly as you imagine. He's funny, he's witty, he's out there all the time. Bill wasn't like that at all. He was a shy, quite reserved man, 1-to-one, he was amazing, and he, of course, he could perform, and he was performing on television, but he was performing a version of himself which he felt comfortable with, which is lovely, and he would do that at Bird Fair as well, of course.
Yeah, I was sad I missed any of his talks at Bird Fair. We only started going to Bird Fair in the last few years, and I don't think he was appearing there any of the times that we went.
No, he hadn't come for about a decade. I mean, he obviously hadn't been well, and he was deeply missed. And next year we will do a huge celebration for him. I've got wonderful clips. But the other great news is that on Sunday, the 16th of August, BBC 4 are running an evening with Bill Oddie, or even without Bill Oddie, if you like, in which they're going to run the best of Bill Oddie Goes Wild, which is a very good programme with some absolutely top moments, including the funniest outtake you will ever have seen at the very end, over the credits, when he's on St Kilda. And then they're running... they didn't consult me or anyone else, so Bill's wife Laura or his agent or anyone, but they actually did exactly the right thing. They're then running a very unusual birding with Bill Oddie, and we called it Bill's Beginnings, and it's from the second series, I think, maybe the third. And it's basically Bill Oddie's Gone Birding, which is his memoir from the age of effectively young boy to 18. And we effectively put that on television. So we had him visiting his local patches in Birmingham, and then he went to Dungeness, and then Norfolk to see an incredibly rare bird. And we went back to the garden where he'd seen this bird, and guess what? There was a pair of them there, and they were going, coo, 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 coo. And they were collared doves, of course, but he saw the first ones.
Wow.
It was the first breeding pair in Britain.
Wow.
That was in the 50s, when he was sort of 16, 17. So, it's a lovely program, and I'm so looking forward to seeing it again, because they haven't been repeated for a long time. So that's going to be a lovely evening and a sort of appointment to see for everyone.
Absolutely. We really look forward to that. Did you ever go birding with him, by the way?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'd go birding when we were out, both in Britain and abroad. Of course, we did Trinidad, Poland, all those places. We didn't have much time to go birding, but we would go out, and I've been on the heath with him over the years. And he came down here. We did a talk in Taunton, in the theatre there, and we went out birding in Somerset. So, and of course he was brilliant, not just at birds, but all wildlife. He was really, really good at plants and insects and all sorts of things, So it was always a joy. He preferred birding on his own, but he tolerated me.
Is there one moment you can remember that you'll treasure being out birding with Bill?
There are so many, and actually the moment that comes to mind isn't a birding one, it's a mammal one. It's very typical, we'd gone to the Moray Firth, to Chinonry Point, where we were guaranteed to film and see bottlenose dolphins. It's pretty straightforward. You go there, and there they are. Not that morning. And we had the local expert with us, and he was great, really helpful guy. Oh, no, don't worry, they'll be along in a minute. And then, of course, the doubts crept in. We spent the whole morning there. We only had about 5-6 days filming on these programs. This was really seriously a loss of time and everything. And then we went to have fish and chips at the local cafe, and we were quite late and very hungry and very, very annoyed. And the lady came up, lovely woman, and she was sort of chatting to us while we wanted her to take our order. But she was like, oh, you're filming wildlife. Oh, there's a lot of dolphins here. Yeah. And then she'd go, oh, we get seals, of course, grey seals and common seals. That's really lovely, but please, can you just take our order? I was getting what my daughter calls hangry, hungry and angry. And then she said, oh, and sometimes we get a wee otter on the shore. There it is, now. And literally outside the window, across the road, across the beach, there was this otter demolishing an eel to just literally swam up there. And Bill claims that everyone raced out to film it except me, and that I ate my dinner. I don't think that's true. It may be true. Of course, it sounds fairly typical. But we went out, and Bill did this beautiful, completely ad-libbed account of seeing his second otter ever. Oh, wow. And the first was on Shetland, and he'd only seen it for a moment. And this thing sat there, and we filmed it. We had 2 cameras. So we filmed Bill and we filmed the otter. And I hope I'm pretty certain that will be on the Bill Oddie Goes Wild that's shown on BBC 4, because it was just a wonderful moment, because of course it was so unexpected. And he finishes and he says, that's the thing about wildlife, isn't it? You never quite know what's going to happen. And it's just lovely. It's a lovely piece, but they all were. I've got so many favourites. The goals on South Stack in Anglesey, where again, he turned something we just seen. We just went, oh, there's a gull colony. Let's go and film that. So again, completely made up. Camera crew, just film him, put him there, bang, off you go, Bill. There he goes. So yeah, but there are so many.
Oh.
And what I finally want to say is you're right. Bill changed so many people's lives. But he changed my life more than anyone. I was in BBC Education, and had I not made that first series, which we did there, and then been asked to join the Natural History Unit, which led to everything else, I would have, I was at the stage where I was going to sort of go into middle management and that's not what I wanted to do, but that was the sort of inevitable, what you did next sort of thing. And instead I had a career that lasted another 20 plus years of making TV programs. And there are dozens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people who share something about Bill, that either one of his books or one of his programs, that made them passionate about birds and changed their life. And that's a pretty good legacy, I would say.
Thank you so much for sharing your memories of Bill. I look forward to the evening of programmes on
BBC 4, and that will be Sunday the 16th from 7 p.m.
And we will look out for the talk next year at Bird Fair about him as well. It's been so lovely speaking with you, as you knew him so well. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thanks, you're very welcome.
I'd like to say a heartfelt thanks to Stephen for sharing his memories of Bill with us. They remind us not only of Bill's remarkable achievements, but also of the warmth, humour and passion that inspired so many people who knew him. Bill helped us realise that you don't need to travel to the ends of the earth to experience the wonders of nature. A blackbird in the garden, a robin on the fence post, the first swallow of spring. All of these could be moments of genuine excitement if we simply take the time to notice. Bill often reminded us that the greatest wildlife spectacle might be waiting just outside our own window. So wherever you're listening today, perhaps take a moment to notice the birds around you. It would be a lovely way to remember Bill. If you have your own memory of Bill, a book that got you started, a telly moment, perhaps a chance meeting at a reserve, I'd love to hear about it. Message me using the contact page on my website. The link is in the episode notes. Thank you, as ever, for listening. Thank you to Stephen Moss for joining me today. And thank you, Bill, for making it all right to be a bit obsessed with birds. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show, and to the Drones for the theme music, Short Sleeve Shirt. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.